Good afternoon. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and I'll be making a statement, and then my client will be making a statement. She does give permission to use her name. And her name is Teala Davies. Today we filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York for Teala Davies. When Teala Davies was just 17 years old, living on her own and working full-time to support herself, Jeffrey Epstein preyed upon her, manipulated her to be completely dependent on him, and sexually abused her. By age 17, Teala had already lived through tremendously challenging circumstances. At 11 years old, she was homeless for a year. At 15, Teala began working in order to support herself. Mr. Epstein was presented to Teala as someone who had learned about her challenging circumstances and had the resources and interest to assist her, including by helping her to attend college and study abroad to see the world. She had no idea that he would exploit her and abuse her repeatedly. Ultimately, he raped and sexually assaulted her frequently in a variety of places and settings, including by trafficking Teala to his homes in New York, New Mexico, Florida, the Virgin Islands, and France. He treated her like an object for his sexual gratification. While it was happening, like so many childhood sex abuse victims, she did not comprehend how it had undone her life or how it had impacted her. She is still just beginning to understand the impact of his pattern of manipulation, sexual assault, and betrayal of her trust. We filed this lawsuit today alleging battery, assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We are seeking compensatory and punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. We want justice for Teala, and we look forward to winning our case in a court of law. Teala will speak in a moment, but she has provided this photo of Mr. Epstein and herself. The photo is of Jeffrey Epstein and Teala Davies. It is Teala's first time on a helicopter. They are flying over the United States Virgin Islands. She is smiling because she did not yet realize that he had a predatory plan for her. And she gives permission for you to use that photo. And now I present Teala. Move over, please.
Thank you for coming today. My name is Teala Davies. Okay. There are so many people in this world, so many stories. You look at all the people around you, and it's easy to forget that everyone has a lifetime of memories they walk with. You never know who you are sitting next to, what they have been through, or what they might be going through. I am only one of so many silenced victims out there, past, present, and future victims. Victims that feel they have no voice, and that are trying to ignore and suppress their horrific memories and their horrific truths for fear of not being believed or heard. I am here, and I am ready to be heard. I am here to set an example and inspire all victims of sexual abuse to conquer their fear and tell someone. It's not only cleansing, but you will be heard, and people will listen. I am here for them. I was only 17. I was the perfect victim. I was on my own and I needed help. Jeffrey Epstein preyed upon me. He put me in a vulnerable and dependent situation and took advantage of me. I was only 17 years old. I was a little girl. It took me a long time to break free from his mind control and abuse. It wasn't a clean break either. I still have flashbacks. It still hurts. And like I said, I am still scared. I am healing from this every day. This complaint that I filed today is a part of that healing. As we all know, Jeffrey Epstein will never serve the time he needed to serve. Time that he could have used to reflect, realize, and regret what he has done to so many innocent young girls. I would have liked him to realize that his actions still affect and haunt his victims to this day and beyond this day. For many of his victims, he has disabled their ability to receive intimacy and their ability to receive love. For some, he has disabled their ability to trust. Predators like Jeffrey Epstein have such a negative effect on so many innocent girls and boys' lives. For me and some of the other victims, we have to carry these terrible memories for the rest of our lives, knowing Jeffrey Epstein will never think about us again and will never suffer the consequences of his crimes against us. Thank you.
Teala will not be answering any questions. I will be happy to answer some questions. And I also have a brief statement about Prince Andrew. This is a response to the statement that actually Prince Andrew issued yesterday. I'm very pleased that Prince Andrew stated yesterday that, quote, "I'm willing to help any appropriate law enforcement agency with their investigations if required," end quote. I'm glad that he's willing to speak to law enforcement, although I'm not sure what he means by, quote, "if required," end quote. Is he insisting that he be served with a subpoena to testify? Or is he willing to speak to law enforcement without being legally required to do so? My clients who are victims of Jeffrey Epstein have spoken to law enforcement without being, quote, "required," end quote, to do so. I urge Prince Andrew to contact the investigators for the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and volunteer to be interviewed by them without conditions and without delay. And I'm happy to take any questions. Yes? Would you stand up and so we can hear you better? Thank you. Why did we wait till now to file the lawsuit? It's still timely to file the lawsuit because we are within the year that is permitted under New York law for persons who were children when they were sexually victimized in New York. So now is still an appropriate time to file this lawsuit.
Has your client had any contact with Prince Andrew at any time?
We're not commenting on who she has met or come into contact with when she knew Mr. Epstein. And she knew him, meaning Mr. Epstein, for a period of 2 years, approximately.
Your client knew him.
During that time, she met a number of celebrities, but we're not going to disclose. the names of those well-known people at this time.
but including Prince Andrew.
Pardon me? We're not going to be disclosing who those people were. The reason, however, that I mentioned Prince Andrew is solely because I have been asked by so many reporters about Prince Andrew because of his interview on Saturday and because what appeared to be seeming reluctance on his part to speak to law enforcement, although he was at some point staying with Mr. Epstein, actually very close by to this hotel, in Mr. Epstein's home in New York, in Palm Beach, in the Virgin Islands, and elsewhere. So we think he may have information that would be relevant to the investigation that is still ongoing by the Southern District of New York. Next question.
Hi, Olivia Rubin, ABC News. Has your client been interviewed or in contact with authorities in the Southern District about their investigation into Epstein's alleged conspirators? And if so, has there been anything specifically in relation to Sarah Kellen, because there are some allegations pertaining to her in the suit that was filed today?
All of my clients have spoken to law enforcement, and it's public knowledge that the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York is still conducting a criminal investigation into who may have knowingly conspired with Mr. Epstein to assist, to recruit underage girls, may have assisted in sex trafficking underage girls. And that investigation, the United States Attorney some time ago confirmed, was what the Southern District was continuing to do, even though Mr. Epstein is deceased. I would leave it to the United States Attorney's Office with respect to them to decide what, if any, information they are willing to provide about their investigation. I have no comment on that, but I do understand that it's under ongoing, intense, serious, and I do have confidence that there will be a decision at some point as to whether anyone should be indicted for conspiracy with Mr. Epstein, and if so, which persons should be, that they would ask a grand jury to indict. I can't give you the time frame for that decision-making. That would be up to them. Yes?
Peter Hutchison from AFP. Do you have a clear message for Prince Andrew there? Do you have a clear message for Ghislaine Maxwell as well?
Anyone, and this is not directed at Ms. Maxwell, but anyone who may have assisted or conspired knowingly to recruit and sex traffic underage girls to Mr. Epstein should be concerned. And I'm sure that everyone is aware there's an ongoing investigation.
How was your client introduced to Epstein?
Teala is not commenting on any facts. That she will, however, in an appropriate setting, whether that be in a criminal case, if as and when there is one, if charges are brought against anyone. She is certainly willing to testify if as and when that occurs, and she will testify as to facts in a court of law at an appropriate time if she's asked to testify. In addition, of course, she is willing to testify in her civil case as well. But that's what, so she's not going to comment on the facts today.
Could you tell us, please, when Teala was abused by Epstein?
I'm sorry, I can't hear your question.
Sorry, Stephen writes in the Daily Mail in London. Could you tell us when your client was allegedly abused by Epstein? It's not clear from the statement.
Was she sexually abused by Epstein?
Yes, the
The-
dates.
Oh, well, we're not providing the dates, but the answer is yes. She was,
Yes, I know that. I'm just listening to the allegation, just listening to the actual time.
when she, beginning when she was underage.
Yes. You're not able to say the time period.
The year?
Yes.
Not at this time. Are there any other questions? Yes. A little louder, please.
Can you comment on the two guards that were charged this week in connection to death?
The question has to do with the two guards that were charged this week whose duty it was to monitor Mr. Epstein when he was in custody, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, and that they are charged with falsifying their records in reference to when they were monitoring him or were not. I know that so many of my clients and people in the public are concerned. They don't know what the truth is in reference to Mr. Epstein's death. Clearly, the medical examiner has ruled that it was a suicide. However, no. Experts for family member of Mr. Epstein and others would dispute that it was a suicide. And there are quite a few, at the minimum, suspicious circumstances surrounding his death. The system has continued to fail victims over many years, victims of Mr. Epstein. Justice system failed the victims in Florida when Mr. Epstein got a sweetheart deal. The system failed victims once again by not protecting Mr. Epstein when he was in custody. And so I do think at the minimum the victims are entitled to the truth. Perhaps we will learn more during the course of this criminal case against the guards. I don't know. They've had no justice. They've not learned the entire truth. And so I understand why they would be skeptical about the circumstances surrounding Mr. Epstein's death. So I'm hopeful that they can learn as much of the truth as possible through any criminal case that is proceeding or will proceed, and through any and all civil cases which are now pending or which may be filed in the future. Yes.
I know you don't want to make a specific year, and some of us can do math, but I'm really curious how old you are, Teala. Are you able to?
How old she is now?
Yes.
I want to say or not.
I'm 34 years old.
She's 34 years old now.
Thank you.
Yes.
It said in the suit that you were, quote, dumped in Arizona.
Pardon me?
It said in the suit that you were dumped in Arizona by Epstein. In what sequence did that happen? Him throwing you out of the house?
Okay. Okay, so this question has to do with facts in reference to the end of her time with Mr. Epstein, and therefore,
She's from Arizona?
and therefore, we are not commenting on any facts. But thank you for your question. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.